Let's dispense with the usual pleasantries, the comfortable detours, and cut straight to the uncomfortable, perhaps even painful heart of the matter. Do you genuinely, truly, authentically enjoy what you think you enjoy? I implore you, reflect with unflinching, brutal honesty. Every single time you instinctively, almost reflexively pick up your phone, that sleek, seductive portal to elsewhere, and begin mindlessly, almost hypnotically scrolling, often without conscious thought, without specific purpose, adrift in a sea of fleeting images and algorithmically curated desires. Every time you automatically, almost compulsively open another tab online, ostensibly to see something new, yet knowing deep down in the recesses of your increasingly numb awareness that it doesn't even genuinely interest you, that it's just another fleeting distraction from an unnamed, unacknowledged void. Every time you eat without true hunger, laugh politely without genuine mirth, consume products' content, experiences without any real underlying soul-deep need, but rather from a place of habit boredom, or a desperate craving for a momentary blip of sensation. Ask yourself in those ubiquitous, often unexamined moments, who or what is truly experiencing enjoyment? Is it you, your authentic sovereign self, making a conscious, deliberate choice aligned with your deeper values and aspirations? Or is it primarily the system, that intricate, invisible, yet devastatingly effective network of technology, marketing, social engineering, and cultural conditioning that has meticulously, almost scientifically programmed you, from your earliest conscious moments to relentlessly, insatiably seek immediate, effortless pleasure, often tragically, at the profound, irreversible expense of deeper fulfillment, genuine connection, and lasting contentment? Here is the stark, brutal, perhaps even terrifying truth you absolutely must confront if you have any hope of reclaiming your mental sovereignty, your authentic self. You have likely been systematically, insidiously, almost perfectly programmed to perpetually chase pleasure, to crave constant stimulation, yet paradoxically, often never to truly sustainably achieve genuine soul-satisfying satisfaction or lasting inner peace. And perhaps the most insidious, most dangerous, most diabolical part of this entire global conditioning experiment. You likely didn't even realize the full extent to which this programming was taking place, how deeply its tendrils had wrapped around your psyche, how effectively it was shaping your desires, your habits, your very perception of reality. We are undeniably, almost suffocatingly living in an era, a civilization where superficial, fleeting pleasure seems readily, almost aggressively available, lurking tantalizingly around every digital corner offered through countless consumer choices packaged in ever more seductive forms. But ask yourself honestly, with a courage that may feel unfamiliar, why is it seemingly never enough? Why does the satisfaction, the high derived from these readily, instantly available pleasures feel so ephemeral, so hollow, so ultimately unsatisfying, often leaving behind a persistent, gnawing sense of underlying emptiness, a vague yet profound dissatisfaction, a quiet hum of existential dread? Aldous Huxley, with astonishing, almost chilling literary prescience, predicted precisely this state of affairs, this gilded cage of comfortable despair nearly a century ago. In his seminal dystopian masterpiece Brave New World, he issued a profound prophetic warning, one that perhaps resonates even more powerfully, more urgently, more terrifyingly today in our hyper-connected, digitally saturated world than when he first penned it. That ultimate societal control in the future, the most effective form of tyranny, wouldn't necessarily or even primarily arrive through overt, brutal, jackbooted oppression, through famine, or through physical chains, but rather far more insidiously, far more seductively, far more effectively, through the ubiquitous, overwhelming, irresistible availability of pleasure. Control wouldn't be maintained primarily through visible, tangible force, but rather through masterful, technologically amplified, algorithmically perfected distraction. He envisioned with haunting accuracy a world where there would be no practical pressing need to actively ban books, to censor dissenting ideas, to silence critical voices through overt repression. Why? Because the populace, saturated, almost drowned in an endless deluge of easily digestible, instantly gratifying, intellectually unchallenging entertainment, would simply gradually, almost imperceptibly, lose all genuine interest, all sustained capacity for deep reading, for critical thinking, for complex, nuanced thought. A world where uncomfortable, challenging, inconvenient truth wouldn't need to be actively, forcibly hidden by a totalitarian state, because it would be effectively, effortlessly buried, rendered invisible beneath insurmountable, ever-growing mountains of stimulating yet ultimately irrelevant information, trivial pursuits, manufactured desires, and endless, meaningless digital noise. A world where citizens wouldn't need to be overtly physically controlled by external coercive forces, because they would be far too effectively, perhaps even willingly, almost joyfully addicted to their own technologically induced dopamine-driven slavery, tragically, fatally mistaking constant superficial stimulation for genuine freedom, confusing endless choice with authentic autonomy. And here you are. Look around, observe honestly, critically, without comforting illusions. Are we not in many significant, undeniable, profoundly disturbing ways already inhabiting, perhaps even enthusiastically co-creating Huxley's meticulously predicted, chillingly accurate world? A world where nearly every fleeting desire, every impulsive whim, every superficial craving seems capable of being fulfilled within seconds, often with just a mindless click, a habitual swipe, a conditioned response. A world where satisfaction, or at least the promise of satisfaction, is perpetually marketed as instant, effortless, readily, ubiquitously available, yet simultaneously, paradoxically, tragically. A world where the underlying pervasive sense of emptiness, of disconnection, of existential angst of a life unlived, seems only to multiply, to deepen, to become the unspoken, unacknowledged background hum of modern existence. A world where pleasure itself, that natural vital component of a healthy life, often ceases to function as an organic reward for meaningful effort, for genuine connection, for overcoming challenges, for creative expression, and instead increasingly alarmingly operates like a powerful, ubiquitous, highly addictive drug offering, temporary fleeting escape from discomfort or boredom, but fostering deeper, more insidious dependence, a weaker will, a more fragile psyche. Because that fundamentally is what they, the often faceless yet immensely powerful architects of our attention economy, the sophisticated purveyors of instant gratification, the corporate entities whose business models depend on your addiction, have arguably masterfully, tragically done to the very concept, the very experience of pleasure. They have skillfully, systematically, almost scientifically turned it into a highly effective, virtually invisible control mechanism. Do you genuinely, truly believe you are free and autonomous agent in your own life, simply because you possess the apparent choice of what media you consume, what products you buy, what distractions you engage with, what fleeting sensations you pursue? But who or what is really choosing when nearly every available option, every algorithmically curated feed that shapes your reality, every enticing, psychologically targeted advertisement that manufactures your desires has been meticulously, brilliantly designed not necessarily to serve your deepest needs, your long-term well-being, your authentic aspirations, but primarily, often exclusively, to trap your attention, to exploit your known psychological vulnerabilities, to bypass your rational mind, and to keep you perpetually consuming, perpetually seeking, perpetually dissatisfied, perpetually needing the next hit, the next fix, the next fleeting escape. Look around you. I implore you with critical awakened awareness. Observe the sheer, overwhelming, almost insane amount of stimuli relentlessly, aggressively competing for your finite, precious, irreplaceable attention every single waking moment of your existence. Every notification pinging, buzzing, vibrating on your device. A Pavlovian bell demanding your instant response. Every carefully engineered sound, every jingle, every sonic logo designed to capture your auditory focus to implant a brand in your subconscious. Every flashing banner at every pop-up, every auto-playing video a visual assault on your senses. Every fleeting flash of color, every provocative image, every emotionally charged headline in a rapidly, endlessly scrolling feed, each represents a potential trap, a subtle hook, skillfully, masterfully disguised as harmless entertainment, convenient information, or necessary connection. Immediate pleasure, effortless gratification has effectively, insidiously become the new dictatorship. A subtle, yet incredibly powerful, almost invisible form of control. They don't need to overtly, violently punish dissent, to imprison critics, to burn books. They simply effectively, overwhelmingly entertain you into passive compliance, into a state of comfortable, distracted apathy. They don't need to actively, forcibly repress your thoughts, to censor your ideas. They merely brilliantly stimulate you with an endless, relentless barrage of novelties, of superficialities, of manufactured urgencies, effectively completely preventing deep reflection, sustained concentration, critical analysis. They don't need to physically lock you up in a tangible prison. They simply cleverly fill your world, your mind, with so many trivial, meaningless, distracting options that you become psychologically paralyzed, overwhelmed by choice, unable to focus on what truly, genuinely matters, unable to discern the signal from the deafening noise. And so, tragically, predictably, countless people, perhaps even you, get lost adrift, drowning in a vast, endless sea of fleeting, superficial pleasures, endlessly, compulsively chasing the next dopamine hit, the next viral video, the next social media validation, the next consumerist high, while their real life, their untapped potential, their neglected relationships, their capacity for deep, meaningful work, their ability to make a genuine, lasting contribution to the world, quietly, almost imperceptibly crumbles, erodes, withers around them, often unnoticed, unacknowledged until it's devastatingly, irretrievably too late. It is fundamentally, systematically addiction. And like any powerful, destructive addiction, it is ultimately not the pleasure itself that is perpetually desperately sought, but rather the desperate, compulsive, almost unbearable need for the next dose, the next escape, the next temporary reprieve from the underlying, unaddressed emptiness, the gnawing discomfort, the quiet terror of facing oneself in silence. Consider with unflinching honesty how this insidious dynamic plays out in your everyday life. Food, that sacred source of nourishment and connection, is often no longer primarily about sustaining your body, about sharing communion. It's frequently tragically about seeking immediate, intense dopamine rushes delivered in the highly palatable, hyper-processed, nutritionally bankrupt forms of refined sugar, unhealthy fats, and artificial flavors engineered for addiction, not for well-being. Social media, once promised as a tool for fostering genuine, deep, meaningful connection, is rarely about that anymore for most users. It's predominantly, almost exclusively, about chasing fleeting, ephemeral sparks of artificial validation through likes, comments, shares, and the meticulously curated, often dishonest self-presentation of a life that doesn't truly exist. The endless, relentless stream of content you passively, almost unconsciously consume, the videos, the articles, the podcasts, the memes, is often not about genuine learning, expanding your understanding or broadening your perspective. It functions much more like a form of potent mental anesthesia, numbing your mind, dulling your critical faculties, distracting you from your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own life. They, the system, the marketers, the tech giants, the cultural engineers, have successfully, brilliantly, devastatingly sold us the pervasive, seductive, ultimately soul-destroying lie that the relentless, hedonistic pursuit of pleasure, of comfort, of ease is the ultimate, perhaps the only purpose of life itself. But what if, as Aldous Huxley so chillingly, so accurately warned, this very pursuit in its modern, technologically amplified, instantly gratifying form is actually the slow-acting, insidious poison that is systematically, inexorably destroying our innate, precious capacity for genuine, deep, lasting fulfillment, for authentic joy, for meaningful existence. Aldous Huxley made the chilling critical distinction crystal clear, a distinction more relevant today than ever. The future danger, the true tyranny to fear, wouldn't primarily be one of overt, brutal oppression of jackboots and barbed wire. It would far more likely, far more effectively, be one of ubiquitous, overwhelming, irresistible distraction. And here, right here, lies the truly real, truly terrifying problem for our modern souls. Every single dose of cheap, easy, instantly accessible, algorithmically perfected pleasure subtly, yet systematically, almost imperceptibly, weakens your innate God-given ability to experience and appreciate real, deep, hard-earned pleasure. The kind that arises organically, profoundly from mastery of a skill, from genuine human connection and vulnerability, from making a meaningful contribution to something larger than yourself, from overcoming significant challenges, from creative expression, from spiritual insight. The easy pleasures dull the palate for the profound ones. Observe the devastating consequences already unfolding, accelerating all around you, perhaps even within you. Young children, their delicate developing brains saturated, almost marinated in hyperstimulating, rapidly shifting short-form content, increasingly alarmingly can no longer concentrate sufficiently to read a book, to follow a complex narrative, to engage in imaginative play. yet they can remain passively, almost catatonically glued for hours, days, watching an endless, meaningless stream of 5-second videos. Their attention spans shattered, their capacity for deep engagement eroded. Adults supposedly mature and self-possessed often find themselves utterly unable to comfortably, peacefully enjoy moments of silence, of solitude, of quiet reflection, feeling an almost physical, visceral compulsion, an unbearable itch to fill every potentially empty, potentially illuminating minute with some form of distracting noise, podcasts, music, news alerts, social media feeds, mindless games, anything, absolutely anything, to avoid the terrifying prospect of confronting their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own inner landscape. Relationships, the bedrock of human happiness and well-being, often deteriorate, crumble, because the necessary, sometimes difficult effort, the unwavering patience, the courageous willingness to navigate inevitable conflict, the vulnerability required for deep, lasting intimacy, seem no longer justified, no longer worthwhile, no longer appealing, when the seductive, deceptive illusion of instant gratification, of effortless connection, of infinite alternative options is just a click, a swipe, a fleeting fantasy away on a dating app, a social media platform, a pornographic website. Effortless pleasure systematically, insidiously destroys our capacity, our will, our very desire to fight for, to strive for, to endure for what genuinely, truly, deeply matters. Because the experiences, the achievements, the connections that bring the most profound, most lasting, most soul-satisfying pleasure and genuine fulfillment in life. Mastering a difficult skill or craft, building a meaningful, resilient, loving relationship, achieving a challenging, ambitious, long-term goal, contributing something valuable, unique and lasting to the world, cultivating inner peace and wisdom, are almost invariably, universally those that cost the most in terms of sustained, focused effort, unwavering, disciplined attention, resilience in the face of inevitable setbacks and failures, and the courageous, often uncomfortable willingness to endure, to persevere through periods of discomfort, frustration and doubt. The pearl is found within the oyster, often after much patient prying. Let me reiterate this absolutely vital, life-altering point. The fundamental problem is not pleasure itself. Pleasure in its natural, balanced, earned forms is a necessary, potentially wonderful, life-affirming part of the human experience. It is a biological imperative, a motivator, a reward. The fundamental, insidious modern problem lies entirely in how incredibly easily, how instantly, how ubiquitously, how effortlessly you can now obtain it, particularly in its most superficial, most addictive, most neurologically hijacking forms. It's the difference between a home-cooked meal shared with loved ones and a fast food binge eaten alone in front of a screen. Both involve pleasure, but their sources, their impacts, their long-term consequences are worlds apart. Think critically with awakened awareness about these interconnected, often unexamined phenomena. Why has genuine, committed long-term love arguably become increasingly perceived as disposable, almost archaic in our hyper-individualistic swipe-right culture? Perhaps in significant part because the pervasive, deceptive illusion of infinite romantic and sexual options readily, instantly available online makes sustained effort, compromise, and the hard work of intimacy seem less necessary, less appealing, almost foolish. Why do fewer people, particularly the young, seem willing or even able to pursue truly ambitious, deeply meaningful long-term dreams and vocations that require years, sometimes decades of dedicated, often solitary, unglamorous struggle and sacrifice? Perhaps because the constant, overwhelming availability of immediate, effortless gratification, the likes, the views, the fleeting dopamine hits, makes delayed rewards. The fruits of patient labor seem less appealing, less attainable, almost unimaginable in comparison. And why, despite unprecedented, almost unimaginable levels of material comfort, technological convenience and endless entertainment options, do so many people across all demographics report feeling perpetually, vaguely, yet profoundly dissatisfied, anxious, empty, alienated? Perhaps quite simply because fleeting, superficial pleasure, however abundant, however intense, simply cannot and will never fill the existential void, the soul-deep hunger that only meaning, purpose, genuine human connection and spiritual awareness can truly lastingly address. And this is how easily accessible, relentlessly pursued, technologically amplified pleasure ultimately, insidiously becomes a potent, almost invisible weapon of societal control and profound personal diminishment. It keeps you perpetually, comfortably, willingly distracted, while your precious, finite, irreplaceable life slips inexorably, silently by. It keeps you effectively deeply addicted to your phone, to social media, to consumerism, to noise, to sensation, while simultaneously systematically eroding your very capacity, your neurological pathways to experience deep, authentic, earned pleasure and lasting joy. It keeps you fundamentally, tragically trapped in the endless, exhausting, ultimately futile pursuit of something superficial, something external that by its very nature will never truly arrive, will never fully satisfy, will never quench the deeper, more sacred longings of the human soul. Because again, let this sink in, pleasure itself is not the problem. The problem, the trap, the modern slavery, is the hidden, exorbitant price you implicitly, often unconsciously pay for prioritizing its easy, instant, effortless acquisition above all else. The price of your attention, your focus, your resilience, your depth, your creativity, your connection to yourself and others, your very freedom. The crucial, life-altering question now becomes directed squarely at you, at your conscience, at your soul. Are you still willing to consciously, knowingly keep paying that exorbitant, soul-crushing price? But perhaps the single biggest, most insidious trap of all is not merely the potential pervasive addiction to pleasure itself, as devastating as that can be. It is the deeply ingrained, culturally reinforced, almost universally accepted illusion that you fundamentally need it, constantly, immediately, ubiquitously, in order to cope with life, to feel okay, to be happy, to be normal. We have been relentlessly, systematically taught, programmed, conditioned from birth that happiness is synonymous with constant enjoyment, with the perpetual, uninterrupted absence of discomfort, pain, or boredom. But crucially, tragically, no one adequately, effectively taught us how to skillfully, courageously endure boredom, how to navigate the inevitable, often illuminating voids and silences of existence without immediately desperately seeking escape, distraction, or external stimulation. No one truly deeply prepared us for the inherent, unavoidable emptiness, the existential ache that can and often does arise even amidst overwhelming external abundance, even when all our material needs are met. No one fully honestly explained that a genuinely real life, the kind that possesses depth, resilience, character, and is ultimately profoundly worth living, is not and can never be characterized by an endless, unbroken succession of exciting, pleasurable, effortlessly gratifying moments, but rather more accurately, more truthfully, by a continuous, often challenging series of struggles, of setbacks, of losses, of imperfections, and the hard-won, invaluable wisdom, strength, and compassion gained through consciously, courageously overcoming them. They, the marketers, the influencers, the architects of our consumerist, hedonistic culture, effectively, brilliantly sold us the seductive, deeply appealing, yet ultimately false and destructive idea that everything in life must be constantly stimulating, effortlessly, easy, perpetually pleasurable, instantly gratifying. And consequently now, almost inevitably, every single time, we as individuals, as a collective, inevitably encounter something genuinely difficult, something truly challenging, something requiring sustained, focused effort, something that doesn't yield immediate visible rewards, we instinctively, almost reflexively, feel as though something is fundamentally terribly wrong, wrong with the situation, wrong with us, wrong with life itself. Our tolerance for discomfort, for ambiguity, for delayed gratification has been systematically, catastrophically eroded.